There we go.
Welcome, everybody, to the first virtual divorce dinner party. He said, she said. I'm Cheryl Pankhurst, one of your hosts, and this is Nigel Smart, my fabulous co-host. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Nigel.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think this should be a lot of fun. Let's see what we come up with and what questions we get.
Okay? Absolutely. So if you're wondering, first of all, I want to say that anything that Nigel and I are talking about tonight, it is in light that there is no abuse or addiction issues within your relationship or your divorce or your separation. That would make things in a very different context.
Absolutely.
So this is our disclaimer, just letting you know this is your typical. Doesn't feel very typical when you're in it, but your typical divorce separation situation. So just to let you know there. And
1 in 2. 1 in 2 are, if you believe in professional classes, 70% of us are going to go through this at least once.
Yeah.
Shocking indictment of matrimony.
Yeah. Well, I think it's 48% for first marriages and 70% for second marriages.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And based on our experience, we fit right into that little mold.
Yeah, but I'm happy now.
Absolutely. So let's just talk about first why we decided to call it He Said, She Said. And we thought that was really important because Nigel and I, as we continued to meet and talk about divorce and these issues, we realized that there is a very different perspective on each side. One partner, not necessarily gender specific, but one partner feels one way, another partner feels another way. They have a different perspective. They see things differently. They feel things differently. And so we thought it would be really interesting and informative and impactful to bring this to light. Because if we are not considering our ex's perspectives and where they are in the stages of this, then we are really putting ourselves in a spot that doesn't need to be there. This can be a game changer, right, Nigel? What do you think?
I think so, and I really think that in true fashion, we tend to get our blinkers on. We tend to be very myopic in terms of how things are affecting us, because it is a very, very personal thing. It's a very hurtful thing. It's something that I think both of us would say might start off okay, but in the majority of the cases it goes sour. I still believe that I'm very skeptical when I hear people say, oh, we had an amicable separation and oh, it went all hunky-dory and all the rest of it. My own contention is then there was never a passion in that marriage, because I can't believe that you can be amicable and walk away from somebody that you've spent a long time with and built assets, had children, etc. I think that if you put a lot into the marriage, then it has to be traumatic when it rips you apart. And I really do believe that. Now, that's very contentious, and that's fine. And maybe you can all chime in and like we see on X, and vehemently disagree. But that is the benefit of my experience. That's what I see with clients. That's what I see from ladies and gentlemen as they send me notes on our site. So I'm throwing that out as a point of debate. I think what you're saying, Cheryl, is absolutely on the money, which is why we thought it'd be fun to do this. We do see things differently. We're hormonally different. We have our own internal prejudices in terms of what we think our roles are, and that's exacerbated again in terms of the different stages of life that we go through. And also today, as we've noticed, particularly in the electronic age this last 20 years, where we've got millennials, the back end of boomers, we've got Gen Z, Gen X, they're all, and then the COVID-19 situation played into things and altered society's thinking too, especially in relation to childbirth. That has all added into sort of like a mix, like a big cooking pot of, can anybody ever make any sense of this? Certainly, I don't think there are any generalizations. There are some general rules of thumb, but not generalizations. And you have to listen and you have to find out what's going on. But above all, you have to decide at the end of the day, as this thing separates, breaks up, the future, the now, the future is what it's about. And you need to decide what it is you want now. Big mistake to go back. Look over your shoulder occasionally, but only do that, as I would say, and I know we've talked about this before, but I would only do that in relation to being able to gauge how far you've come. Because I think you've got to leave things behind. And I've said to you before, I think a piece of you really has to die before you can completely move on. And that's my core belief. Yeah,
I completely agree. And before anybody thinks that we're just like pulling this information like out of a book, we just need to tell you that Nigel and I have both been there twice each. So we have a little bit of experience. And I think we could both say, I don't know about you, Nigel, but I would think that I would love to share our individual stories because they're very different. But I would also like to say, I really, truly wish the 20 years ago I went through this, and then the 8 years ago I went through it again. I sure wish I had somebody to talk this through like this, to know that I'm not alone, to know that there's a way forward. There's always a light. I'm not stuck. I'm not moving backwards. I mean, I think that would have been really helpful for me. So Nigel, why don't you just like let people know we're not a couple of frauds. What's your story?
No, we're not a couple of frauds at all. I think, in my case, I got married very early. It was out of college. I fell in love. I was inexperienced. And very, very quickly, we're making go of things. But very, very soon, you start going in different directions. I have enormous respect for that person. But I needed a different type of person as I grew up, as I got towards 30. And I met somebody here in the US, and that flourished. I look back now and I see differences again, in terms of we were a very interesting couple, I think. We went through a lot together. We built a lot. I made a lot of compromises, professionally and also in relation to starting a second family. It was a shock of my life, as I thought we'd compromised our way through to that point where everybody was grown up and, we were ready to switch gears into a different type of life. And that didn't happen. Somebody made their mind up and it was chaos. And so I had to look inward and say to myself, how can I be better? What was down to me? Take 100% responsibility for that. No problem at all doing that. But not beat myself up for the fact that somebody else decided that they wanted something different. I think that you have to come to that acceptance. And very, very quickly, within a month or so, I realized that this was not recoverable, even though I probably wanted it to be recoverable. Mm-hmm. And I moved forward. And what I started to do, as you well know, Cheryl, is I built my new life plan. I had to decide very, very quickly okay, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? What's important to me? And I had to start building the mechanism to take me from where I was at that point to where I wanted to be. And that was a very methodical sort of process. And I built a process. And it required me to do and form new habits. I had to change, as I say, I had to change my playbook. I had to become a single guy again. And I had to decide and form new single boy habits again. And I had to get myself into routines. Routines sometimes are a pain in the neck, but they're very, very good for you when you require stability. Yeah. And this knocks you for six, probably almost as bad as anything that you'll experience in your life. Yeah. When I started to notice things was when people started to say to me, "What are you doing?" And I would reply, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, you should have gone down like the Titanic." And I say, "Well, I guess so." You know, my story that I always share with people is that it felt like I got hit with 4 torpedoes below the waterline. But I'm a fighter. I'm from, north of England, lad, northern grit, Churchillian, we never give up, and I'm not going to lie down. I don't do pity parties. I have a moment of pity occasionally. We all do. Even the gurus like Tony Robbins and other people have bad moments. But we don't stay there. Yeah. And that's the key. You don't live in a pity party. Yeah. And you basically anchor yourself with a certain level of different mechanisms that force you to make progress. And it's a degree a month, then 2 degrees a month. And within 6 months, you've pulled away like a ship that's sailing out of a harbor, and you're sailing into blue ocean instead of red ocean. Yeah. And that builds confidence. And with the confidence, you build more momentum, and then things start to happen. People start coming into your life, and it doesn't look black anymore. And you've got hope. But I always say hope's a prayer for losers. I always like to have things that you can chart. And what I did was I like to break humor into this, because I think if you laugh and you approach this in a joyful way, it makes it easier to do some of the things like getting up and doing certain things in the morning, making a bed in the morning, just like the Admiral on YouTube says. Yeah. Get up and make your bed in the morning, which I do religiously now, because if nothing else goes well in the day, when you go to bed at night, you've got a freshly made bed. And that counts for something. It's small wins. It's making sure that you respect yourself. And that's very, very difficult to get back when people are criticizing you. Yeah. But you need to build that foundation again. And once you do that, you can build, as I always joke, the yellow brick road. You have the idea of the place where you want to be, whether that's your Emerald City or whatever it is, to quote a Ronald Reaganism. And you build that yellow brick road. Each step, each stone is a brick along the way. Yeah. And you methodically build it in that way with tasks and things that you can achieve, and you don't beat yourself up. And so that's my story. That went on for six or 7 years. I wrote a bestseller book, as you know about it, Bouncing Back. I started coaching guys because people asked me, "Can you help me?" I said, "Sure." But I always wanted the right relationship. And so I found somebody. I had to travel to Colombia to find her. But I found Eddie, and I'm very, very happily married of 2.5 years again. That is the prize. That if that's interesting for you, Cheryl and I can show you how to do that. Yeah. If it's not for you, we can also show you how to navigate being a bachelor for the rest of my life, or a bachelorette, and I'm being very, very happy.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to get comfortable in your skin. And I know that's something that you feel strongly about. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you?
Absolutely. So high school sweethearts, really first boyfriend, first girlfriend, and, fell in love and had this crazy life of owning businesses and just being super busy and really active and very entrepreneurial. And when it was time to settle down with kids, things, change and shift a little bit. And that's what happens when you start young and you don't, that whole find yourself at 30, that's not actually a myth. I think that's actually something, really something to look at. My kids are now 34 and 32. And I'm always like, just take your time. And they have taken their time. But when they were 20 and 25, I thought I had my first child by the time I was 22. And that was a different time, of course. But after 20 years, we separated. And, we had so much together. Like, we grew up together. Our families were each other's families. Our friends were each other's friends.
Right.
We didn't have any kind of autonomy at all.
That's true, isn't it?
Yes. So
it's hard at 20 years.
It really is.
20 years, 21 years.
Yeah. And the impact, you don't really consider, I had it on my mind a lot longer than my ex did, and a lot longer. And I just didn't see that way forward. But I also really started to feel like, this isn't me. This just isn't me. I'm just not happy. Do I want to leave my kids for every other weekend and every Wednesday? No, I wanted them under the same roof. So it kept me there for a very long time until I started realizing that, is this what I want them to think a really amazing, close, intimate relationship looks like? And so it was time to go. And, we spent about a year of very tumultuous, trying to settle things down. And now I can say we are very, very, very good friends. And every once in a while he'll say how lucky we are, but no, we worked very hard. There is no luck about being friends with your kid's parent. No luck. You have to work at it. Sometimes it gets there, sometimes it doesn't. You need two very willing participants. But it also means you're at different stages of the game, which is a really big part of the he said, she said, and I think how he viewed this whole thing, I don't know about you, but from what I could see, there was a big ego and failure, and I can't look after my family, and I just failed, and I couldn't do what I needed to do. And I was like, it just completely surrounded my world. Like, I just felt like I just had to get out. I just had to get out. I just had to get out. And so that was that push, pull. So there was no, it took a long time to get to a different place. Whereas a big part of why we're doing this, so that hopefully we can show you where the landmines are and allow you to like step over that one and step over that one and get to that really good place to be faster.
And also to say that it isn't all cookies and cream or roses. And to get where you need to go, you do have to go down the rough trail. And there is, rough water to navigate before you can get into that blue ocean, that blue water, where it looks like paradise. And you can find that. I find, Cheryl, guys are very, very battered by the experience. I know ladies are too, because I talk to them all the time. But I'm always taken aback at how truly battered guys that wanted to be in the marriage. I'm not talking about guys that are shifty and having relationships on the side. And that happens on both genders too. But I've noticed that the guys really have a problem with picking themselves up, especially if they've got to middle age, they've had 20 years of marriage. they have a big guilt problem and self-esteem issue.
Yeah.
And the only way that they feel that they can release that is abusing themselves. They abuse themselves with either hard alcohol or recreational drugs, or in some cases revenge sex. Every one of those things is unhealthy.
Yeah. And it's funny, in this day and age, what I notice now is men still have that. People still perceive men to be, oh, you weren't able to do it. You weren't able to keep people happy. You weren't able to hold it together. And then, society looks at women and goes, way to go. You're strong. Get out there. Be independent. You're fine. And that's a tough thing. Even great. I felt great at that time, being celebrated to be the strong woman, to walk out not knowing what's happening. But it's not fair. It wouldn't be fair to my ex. It wouldn't be fair to the male side of this relationship, that society is now going, well, look what you did. You ruined it. You blew it. But look at her. She's out there shining. She's independent. I think that's a really tough thing to accept. And from the outside looking in, it's like, oh.
It's a failure on both sides.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, neither gender is particularly good at accepting their part in the responsibility of what's happened.
Yeah.
It's always somebody pointing the finger. I don't know. I went through that. And it can get very ugly, especially with children, as you know.
Yeah.
Should we move on and talk a little bit more about one of our favorite topics? I'm just looking at some of our notes here.
Yes.
Self-care, recovery.
Yes. The most underrated thing we hear about.
Thing that we would share with people is, do you want to go first on the self-care?
Sure, of course. So for me, I really had to, again, carve out this new identity. If you remember what I said, I grew up in this relationship until I was 40. And so I really never, you might do the odd girls' night out, but I never had a very independent Cheryl story. And so I really had to figure out what the heck that was. I wasn't sure.
Right.
And, and I spent a lot of time on the nights they were with Dad, just pouting and grumpy and missing them. And it was awful, until I started to take one step forward. So, okay, maybe I'm going to look into this meditation stuff. I'm going to see what that's like. And I'm going to look into this journaling stuff. And what's that like? And just keep trying little things until I finally had a routine that felt like the only part of my life that was set in stone. And it was the one thing I felt like when I really couldn't rely on anything or anybody, I felt like this allowed me to rely on myself. So when I said, I'm going to get up at 5, I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes. And for me, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just sitting there and I was thinking of my grocery list and what I was going to make for dinner. But I was sitting there and I was sitting there and sitting there. And until I found guided meditations and I found something like journal prompts, something to keep going. But what it did for me is I started to notice very slowly, but I did notice in situations where I would have been way more reactive, I wasn't. And in situations where I thought, I can't count on anybody. Nobody keeps their word. But when I kept my word to myself, it triggered something in me like, okay, I can depend on me, because it starts from within. We need to do our work first. Before anything else happens. And it might seem menial, or it might seem, so writing things down, but it's a scientific fact. When you write out your feelings or your frustrations, and you can write in this journal, you can write how much you hate your ex to the 10th degree, but that way it's out.
Right.
And you're not telling your ex, you're not telling your kids, you're not telling who doesn't need to hear it, but it's that. Or, even now, I still, every morning, I have a dance party, because that's how it starts my day. But it's those, I truly do. I look like a ding dong, but I love it. But that's how I start my day. And that puts me in that, brings your vibration up. It brings your, your emotions are up, you're fired up, you're ready for the day. And again, it's not like winning the lottery in that you see an immediate thing. But I will notice even back then, I would go through the lawyers' meetings and I would go through, figuring out the finances and all of that. But then at the end of the day, I would say, I'm not reacting the way I normally would. Like something is working. And I think that is the big part of self-care that sometimes, people kind of brush aside, and it doesn't really matter where you are in your journey. This is something you can start today. And yeah, absolutely. Tell me about your self-care. What does self-care look for you?
I know this self-care is the absolute most important thing. It's the bedrock. It's where you start. It's accepting where you are. It's understanding, well, where am I right now? And if you can write down all the things that you are feeling, whether it's, where are you with your career? Where are you with your relationships? Where are you with your emotional life? Where are you with your finances? Where are you with your physical health? And you start to record and journal exactly how you are. Now you've got a baseline. And why is that important? It's because we have to grow. We have to grow forward, because that's the mechanism which takes us away. It's like a ship steaming away from the harbor. We're gonna go away from the harbor, and we're gonna go out into the blue ocean. Hopefully, the blue ocean is the ideal space where we want to be. Mm-hmm. And you need to know exactly where you are, and then you need to create new routines. As I said, one of my best friends said to me, "You've got married man routines. You're not going to make it if you don't shift." Best advice I ever got. I needed single man routines because I was a single man again. I'd forgotten how to be a single man. And so, at least initially, you need to set routines up. The routines are, you get up in the morning, and what do? You look in the mirror. And one of the things that's important in looking in the mirror is you actually see in the mirror a proportion of what you're feeling at that moment. So to come back to you need to promote actions in yourself that will make you feel better. You need to move. With movement, you will create, you'll raise your serotonin, which is your happy mood hormone. You will create dopamine hits. What are dopamine hits? It's the thing in the brain that tells you, I feel great, I feel better. So you look in the mirror, and you look, and you brush your teeth, and you say, gee, you're a handsome guy. And you're looking good. And you shut your eyes and you visualize, what is your day? What would your day be like if you could have a perfect day?
So good.
You look in the mirror and you shut your eyes and say, okay, what is my perfect day? What is it going to feel like? What am I going to do? Visualize that day. And then open your eyes. Another great thing is to, your brain doesn't actually know reality from whether it's being tricked. Those of us that are a little older will remember from the 90s, the Memorex tape adverts. Is it real or is it Memorex? Well, the reason I mention that, because it always brings a smile to my face. But I remind people, especially guys maybe that are 40 or 50 who have got families, they'll remember that time. And your brain doesn't know it's being tricked. And so you can say things like, I'm a genius, and I use my wisdom daily. So you come out with some mantras. I have a famous one that I've used with lots of clients. I'm a winner, I'm a winner, I'm a winner. I'm a winner in my health. I'm a winner in my life. I'm a winner in my relationships. I'm a winner in my business. I'm a winner in my finances. I'm a winner in my love life. I'm a winner, winner, winner. And you start saying that to yourself a dozen times, 20 times with your eyes closed. And then you go and have a hot shower, and then you get dressed, and then you barrel out and you take on the day, you seize the day. Now you're in a different place. The whole metabolism is in an upflow mode.
Yeah.
And you will get different reactions from people. You will get positive reactions with people. You smile at people and they'll say, hey, what's good with you? And they will make you feel better because you need camaraderie. You need to feel needed. Right now, you feel like a piece of crap because you've been ditched.
Yeah.
In the majority of cases, you've been ditched. So you feel like a piece of crap. You feel worthless. Your self-esteem is nowhere to be had.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that you work on these things. The visioning, I think, is really important. I love that because you can create whatever you want yourself to be. And then as we go through the other parts of the process, we build routines, whether it's a fitness routine, a diet routine, other routines that will make you feel like you're winning. I want people to have winning in their head. You know, one of the things that I tried just as a little sort of experimental routine, if you will, when I go to the gym, I go on the ellipticals and I started chanting this thing in my head. And after 2 or 3 minutes, I'm watching my pulse rate as I've taken it up to what, the level that I should be at on the machine for my age and weight and everything. It might be 155 beats a minute or something. And then I noticed that it's coming down. It's coming down.
Wow.
And what I'm doing now is my brain, the way I'm thinking, my mind, not my brain. My mind is now controlling my metabolism. It's controlling what I do. One of the things that we both know is we get het up, we get anxiety.
Yeah.
This is stressful, what we're going through.
Yeah.
You need to know that under that stress, you are affecting the chemical structures in your brain. I've talked about this in our last podcast. Evidence from Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who is a famous neuroscientist and neurocognitive expert, has got demonstrated proof now that when we think negatively and we carry emotions and we don't get rid of them, we're actually forming negative structures in our brains. And that is hurting our bodies because our mind controls our brain and our brain controls the rest of our body.
Yeah.
I showed that in a small experiment that through my mind, I was controlling my physiology.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It sure is. Oh my God.
So these are the things that I look to do. And those are things that we can train anybody to do, any man, any woman. It needs to be something that you do over and over again.
Yeah.
It needs to be a habit. Again, to get habits formed, we're talking 30 or 40 days. It's not something that we can do twice and it's going to work.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. If we want to build a muscle, we have to work at it every couple of days. If we don't exercise that muscle, we have to exercise kind of, if you want to call it, the muscle of our mind, so that we shift the way we think. The way we shift is, and we'll go on to this in maybe our next segment, is we will flip the story. Right now, you have a story in your head, all of you, that you're a loser. Other people are telling you you're a loser. Cheryl said, She was told she was a loser. I was told I'm a loser. I was told, my God, you had it all.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do? I don't know. Other than I was trying to make things work.
Yeah.
What I knew and what I intuitively knew and what I've known since is that we have to shift our mindset. It's all about the mind and our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Once you shift your mindset, everything else becomes possible.
Yeah. And you don't have to, if journaling or meditation, if that isn't for you, that's okay. But if you can if you sit and think, what's one thing that brings me a little bit of joy?
Right.
That's your self-care. And
That's your self-care.
and if it's reading a paragraph a morning, if it's dancing, if it's knitting, it doesn't matter. Whatever, if you can sit there and go, oh my gosh, when I do this activity, time flies. I don't even know what's going on.
It's walking the dog. It's
Yeah.
playing some music and being selective about your music. Don't put on something which is dirged. That's going to bring you down. Try and find something that's uplifting and makes you feel empowered. What you're needing to do is do things to empower. Remember, you're railing against trauma inside your body and in your mind. And so we're trying to counteract trauma until such time as you're strong enough to be able to move forward and chart a new course.
Yeah. Yeah.
That takes a little bit of time. And these are the tools, or these are the elements that we think that are beneficial. And we've talked about this at great length now a few times. And depending upon the type of guy or the type of woman that you are, you're going to emphasize certain things. I do like to journal, but not every day. But I think it is a great idea. There is something, how do you say it? There is something special that when you write things down, something very, very special happens. It drives it into your consciousness.
And something about journaling that it's making me think right now, I've always been a journaler, like for years and years, because I love creative writing. I've always been a journaler. So it's my jam. But when I was really struggling and I had all my journal notes, one thing I noticed is that how long I've been struggling with the same thing in that relationship. So you go back and it's like 50 first dates, 50 first dates, 50 first dates. So this is where it builds you up to say, okay, I'm drawing the line here. I need to have a voice. But it also came in very handy because there's so many times after the separations, both separations, that I felt like, the stress got to me. Am I making a mistake? Maybe this shouldn't be happening. Maybe. And I would go back to my journals and go, no, you don't deserve this. This is not the way you're going to live your life. This is not making you happy. And so even if you have, a little tiny Post-it note that you need to keep in your purse, if you're at the initial stages and you're really thinking, oh, I guess this is not worth the fight. This is not worth, but deep down that you're just not happy, which is reason enough. Then you go back to your journal. You just have a little point form. Okay, this, and this. Okay, I'm good. I can take one step further. Put it in my pocket. That came in so handy for me when I was almost giving up. The guilt, the shame, the stigma, the cost. And
there are plenty of people out there that will remind you of that. One of the things that we've talked about before is you need to guard your mind. You need to guard the stuff that's coming inside your head. If you can shut that off, do not, I'll say this 3 times, do not listen to a lot of the unsolicited advice you're getting.
Thank you.
Because it's toxic. It's toxic from the point of view of everybody's well-meaning, but if they've never been through this, and I include experts on this, expert therapists who have never been through a divorce themselves, you cannot imagine the trauma and the anxiety that it breeds in you, especially If you are have any size of family or businesses, the complexity of the mess that you've got to dissect is horrible. One of the things that's very, very important is that you take time to figure that out. Remember, the lawyers will help you with the legal stuff, but they have no idea on how to talk to you about the stuff we're addressing here.
And it gets expensive if you depend on your lawyer.
This is emotion.
Yeah.
This is about you making better choices. This is about you deciding, what do I want out of my life now? You know, I joke about, who do you want to be as 2.0? You know, you've got to change your playbook. You have to change your playbook because in the initial stages, especially when the lawyers are involved, there will be a lot of manipulation. And if they know how to push buttons, it'll just get more and more acrimonious. So the quicker you can change the playbook of how you react to somebody that's been understanding you for 20 years, the sooner you can disconnect, and prevent them from doing that. You agree?
I do. And it almost leads me in, when you said 2.0, it leads me into our next kind of segue into building our independent muscle, our inner champion. And I'd love to know, what does that look like for you? Like, as he said, what does it look like for Nigel to build his independent muscle?
Right. The way I'm teaching this right now is we have to build that new identity. It's very, very easy to fall into what I call the pity party. We're all human. We all have our moments. I remember one day I had taught my oldest boy that you can't stay in a certain place when things are going bad for you, at any point in your life. One day, I was flying back through London. I'd been out in Asia on business, and I was in a pub somewhere in London, and we were having lunch together, and I was bemoaning the fact that I was having a hard time with things. And he said, "Oh, come on, Dad. This is where the student became the mentor." I switched places with my son. And he looked at me and he said, "Remember what you taught me?" He said, "You can go there for a little while, but stop it. You can't stay there. Bounce out of it." And I thought, well, maybe they listened after all, which is very, very rare for a 20-something at that time. It is. Now, the way forward is, you've got to let go. You've got to know where you are. You've got to know where you are, and you've got to understand the story now that you want to build. And we approach this as if you want to call it a hero journey. You're going to go on a hero journey. What do I mean by that? It's, you're going to start off, and you can. I'll use a well-known story that most of us know that have grown up with the movies, Star Wars. Okay, so here we are, beaten down, a nobody, basically a deadbeat. Where Luke Skywalker, the person who is basically, he's lost his parents, he's a nobody, he's scraping a living, picking up old robot pieces and you know, making his way. And here you are, the equivalent of a Luke Skywalker, but you don't want to be a Luke Skywalker. What's your dream? What's your dream, Luke Skywalker? You want to be a Jedi Knight. And so what we're going to go on is if you can imagine for a moment, and this might help you sort of conceptualize this, is you're now Luke Skywalker that's basically putting together old bits of robots, which is the remnants of your life. And we're going to actually convert you as you 2.0 or 3.0 over a period of time, and you're going to become a Jedi Knight. And the reason you're going to do that is because you're going to have guides. You're going to have people to help you that are going to take you down that yellow brick road if you want. You're going to have maybe advice from an Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they're going to lead you, and you're going to meet people along the way, the Tin Man, the Lion, the Straw Man, whatever. You need to identify people in every facet of your life that's going to be somebody that's going to pull you along, nudge you along. And what we do is we build you a process based on what is it you want out of life. We sit down with you. You sit down with yourself and say, who do I want to be? This is what I want to be. You know, I want to be athletic. I want to be a certain weight. I want to earn a certain amount of money. I want to find this new person. And you get granular about each one of those categories. That might be 5 or 6 things that are important to you. Who do you want to be when you do that transformation? And so I approach things in this way, and I approach myself in that way, and I built a smart, a clever process to transition myself. And I've used that, or aspects of that, to train other people, to transmit them through that same sort of journey. It's very, very organized. It's very, very habitual. You need a routine. We're going to build new routines. We're going to build your Superman routine. We're going to build your Jedi routine. Whoever it is you want to be when you've transitioned. And we're going to follow a very fun process whereby you can see your progress. And this is why the journaling that Cheryl talks about is a really cool thing to do, because we can put you on a challenge for, say, a month or 90 days and say, let's measure, you know, if it's your weight you want to lose, if it's, you know, running, for example, you know, how quickly can you run a couple of miles? And we can time those and see what your performance is. But what's important in all of this, the most fundamental thing, is we have to shift your mindset. We have to shift your mindset from being a loser to being empowered. And that is the most important thing we have to shift. And the way we keep shifting that is we keep stimulating your brain by giving you wins, by giving you low-hanging fruit that you can achieve. And even though you don't achieve everything that you set for a particular target, you're grateful. You say thank you. You have gratitude for the fact that, hey, I've achieved 60% this month of what I set myself. You do not beat yourself up. You say thank you, and you feel gratitude for the fact that you're 60% further along than you were when you started. And then you build again. It's building on success and doing that in a methodical way and having fun. And you celebrate your wins. Because when you celebrate your wins, you imprint in your mind success feelings, and you alter the proteins in your head, and you actually alter how your genes are working to manipulate your physiology. And you become happier. That's what I do.
You know, and this might sound very harsh, but it's a reality. It was for me, is that no matter who initiates the separation or divorce. It's that identity that got you where you are.
Yes.
So if you don't change anything about your identity, that's exactly where you're going to stay. And it means going deep. It means figuring out, how did I get here? Let's go backwards. How did I get here? Did I not use my voice? Did I agree to something? Did I not set a boundary? Whatever it is. Am I codependent? Whatever it is. But it's going deep and going, okay, Cheryl 1.0 landed here. And then got married again, and Cheryl 1.0 landed there again.
Right.
So what does that say to me? I don't want to be Cheryl 1.0. Nope, gotta go. And the very first thing I did when I first separated, like I said, it was, something from high school sweetheart. There was no other relationships. It was just high school, work, married, kids. And the one thing I did, and I would challenge anyone who has never done this, is the dinner for one.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, like, this is a she said. I don't know about he said. I know my partner now goes out for dinner. He travels and has dinner by himself all the time. But at that time, that's just not something you did.
Right.
And so I thought, I'm doing this. This is something that I just feel I have to do. So I went.
You felt you had to get through it.
Yeah, it was just like,
it felt,
it was disgusting, which I thought maybe that means I'm going to grow, right? It's like, when you grow, it's always really hard, super messy, and then, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I went to a really nice restaurant and, of course, didn't even anticipate, was somebody joining you? No, it's just me. So get to the table, and of course they make a process as of removing all the other place settings. And immediately,
I'm on my own. Yeah.
But immediately, of course, I pulled out my phone and I pulled out my book and just made it look like I was just busy doing something else. And I thought, this is not the experience. No. Put everything away. And I was people watching. I ordered a beautiful glass of wine. I had a great dinner. And there was some resistance there for sure. But when I got the check and I paid the check, and Nigel, I was a different person walking out of that restaurant than I was walking in.
I'm sure you were.
And I'm saying this because, and this is the point of the he said, she said, like, that might not mean anything to somebody. It might not mean anything to a guy who would just go to the bar and have a beer. But for some women have never done that. Right. And now I prefer it.
Yeah.
But that was, it's something I would challenge anyone to try, and put your devices away and just move through it. Because I'm telling you, when you come out the other side of that, then what are you doing? Then you're going to the movies by yourself. Best thing in the world. Sorry. Yes, it is. And then you're traveling by yourself.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're gaining all these experiences. You're meeting new people because you're not surrounded with people you know. And it was such an exponential growth for me that it's something I'll never, ever forget. And so I challenge people to, when you're looking at a new identity, like, you're not planning your perfect day around what you did yesterday.
Right. How did you manage you must have had a tremendous amount of self-talk that was going on. So how did you address the self-talk that was obviously going on, where the voice on this side is saying, Cheryl, you can't be here on your own. This is social stigma. And the other side saying, oh, shut up, I'm having a good time. How did you deal with that?
You know what I said to myself? I don't care what anybody else is doing. So they probably don't give a shit what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, what? And I just kept saying, don't flatter yourself. Nobody cares. Don't flatter yourself.
That's the ego,
Nobody
isn't
cares.
it? Yeah.
And it was true. Nobody cared. Nobody cared at all. And it was such a really amazing experience. So if you can pick something,
right,
pick something that you would go, I could never do that by myself. It is so empowering.
Liberating, isn't it?
It really is. And there's even, I started going to these, and I think they're all over the world now, meetups.
Right.
And you can go into a meetup category and you can say, I like live music, and I like this and I like that. I like playing trivia.
Right.
And then you would get this group of people who are single who meet at a local pub, and it's not a dating app. It's not speed dating. It's people who just don't want to sit in a restaurant by themselves or play trivia by themselves. I've made so many friends that way. So there's lots of ways, like it is uncomfortable. But if it's uncomfortable, it means you are growing. You're like one more step there. You're up leveling. I think that is so important. And you're right. Like the self-talk, if it means you have to put a little note on your phone saying, you can do this, they don't care. You can do this, they don't care.
Right.
You're going to come out the other side. There's a light at the end of that tunnel. Like if you can talk yourself through that, it is so liberating. I can't even, yeah, that was.
It's really, again, it's another form of building up your self-esteem, isn't it? It's and putting the ego on one side and saying, like you're saying, I can do this.
Yeah.
One of the other things that guys have a lot of trouble with is, I mean, I suppose as both genders have communication issues, but one of the things that guys have a really bad time with is language and understanding what's being said. It's, you frequently hear women saying, he's listening to me, but he's not hearing what I'm saying. And from a guy's perspective, it's they're talking at me again, and this is what I'm hearing. And I have this technique, which, I call language augmentation. And I have this exercise that I go through where I say, okay, let's practice. You say something to me, and I say to them, write down what is it you think you heard. So they're saying something like, I'm going to be getting home in 20 minutes. You'll be lucky if you see me. I mean, depending on how that's said, it could be quite sharp and offensive. Yeah. So then I asked them, can you take 3 deep breaths? And let's play that again. What other reasons, what other interpretation could you give to that same statement? And they always look perplexed when I say this, but then they write something down. And so we'll do it again. And I'll say, take a few more deep breaths. Let's come back to that and we'll try again. And then I'll say, can we compare all 3 statements now? And, you get the deer in the headlights, you get the jaw dropping, and they'll say, oh my goodness, I see what you're getting at. One of the things that I notice, it's not a complete generalization, but it's a general trend, is that by the time they've done this 3 or 4 times, the energy and the reactivity has gone completely out of their body.
Yeah.
Because as human beings, and I could speak from the men's side for this, and you can address from the ladies' side, we react very, very quickly. What's that saying? We open our mouths before we engage our brains. We all do it. I do it. I did it the other night. And of course, the stinking row here in the house, it took us about 2 hours to get past that. And it happens.
Yep.
You get passionate about things. You take a few more moments and you go through it and you realize, oh my God, if I'd only done that. So I teach guys to try and be responsive. It sounds pedantic, but there's a difference between reactivity and responsiveness.
Absolutely.
If we use these little tools, whether it's taking a counting to 10 or a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 2 or 3 deep breaths.
Yeah.
Before you react, before you reply. The level of communication that you get as a result of that can be enormously different. And when you're dealing with a charged situation, and lawyers are really, I'm sorry to say this, but they don't help a lot of the time. No. Some of them thrive off the conflict. Yeah. And when somebody genuinely feels hurt, and they may be hurt, somebody may have been cheated on, I don't know, then they can't let go straight away. they're going to react pretty quickly. And as we all know, that once you do that, you might as well just adjourn the meeting and go away, because you're not going to get anything useful achieved.
Yeah.
And all you're going to hear is cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching as you spend a few more $1,000 on bills.
Yep.
So that is something that, again, most people listening might not be totally aware of, but it's something that I've found is, listen, none of us are saints. It's difficult to do. Do we do it every time? No, but if you practice it, and I asked people, try and practice that as a daily thing, even with your children, certainly with your working colleagues. You'll find that it makes for a lot easier, more amicable situation that you're dealing with. And I think it seems to be a very effective way that doesn't require a lot of effort, to make things better. Remember, what we're talking about here is a very expensive, a very, very damaging sort of relationship, what I can call it, relationship disaster that we're dealing with. And so the more that you can soften the language, I think the better you stand a chance of getting at least 1 or 2 points sort of that you can agree on as you try to move the ball forward. And once you've made your minds up, the two of you, that you are going to go separate ways, then it's kind of ridiculous if you don't play the game, so to speak, to make sure that you move on so that you can both get on with your lives. And that's really important for children as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm coaching parents, I'm always like, can you pause, notice what's happening, and then choose again? And it only takes a second. It doesn't take a long time. You're not extending your meeting. But if you notice that you're getting hyped up or somebody is getting elevated, can you just pause? And the notice is more like, why is this triggering me? Why am I getting so upset? What is this doing to the people in the room? So if you're having a conflict and your kids are hanging out, what is this doing to the people in the room? And can I choose again? It could be choose to do this later. It could be choose, okay, I could have said that differently. It could be, all of these, but it's just pause, notice, choose. It's
awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's being more self-aware and conscious and consciously taking charge of yourself. We run so much of our lives sort of unconsciously, and we need, in these types of situations, to be more consciously aware and to be thinking in a very conscious way, so that we don't sort of put our boot in our mouth and exacerbate the situations. There was one more thing I wanted to pick up on that we had talked about, to do with language, and it's worth exploring as part of your kind of remediation that you're going through, to notice awareness again. To notice, and I'd write these things down, and I like to have people write these things down. What are the positive drivers in your life? What are the things that get you, kind of get you out of bed and get you moving? What are the things that when you hear them, or when you use that language, are uplifting, they're powering you forward? And conversely, know the negative driver words, the negative words, and try to screen those out of your everyday vocabulary. That it sounds, that sounds a bit esoteric, but actually it works. We tend to use language. I listen sometimes to friends and relatives about how they describe their day. I once had one of my coaches describe his mother this way. And he said, I love my mother unconditionally. but I'm glad she lives 500 miles away. And when asked why, he said, I couldn't last if she lived next door. She's a psychic vampire. And what he was getting at was, you know, the sky's falling. And we all know people like that.
Mm-hmm.
We all know people like that. You say, well, how's the day going? And it's, well, this went wrong. This happened. This happened. Well, you need to adjust your language to project you on an upward trajectory. Otherwise, you know, it's like running in quicksand. Mm-hmm. You're never going to get any momentum going. Yeah. And as I said, in my world, if you can get momentum, you can drive confidence. Mm-hmm. And once you drive confidence, you can drive a lot of progress. And as you correctly pointed out, we can't be fulfilled unless we're growing. Yeah. So our goal should always be towards growth.
Yes. Yes. 100%. And I know we're scratching the surface on everything that we do in our coaching, but we should, you know, the importance of co-parenting.
Yes, that was a good segue, wasn't it?
Yes. Going through this situation, not everybody has kids, but if you do, this is a whole other layer, a whole new ball game. And this is your opportunity to really learn what being collaborative is. And I think we've both had very different experiences,
yes,
as co-parents. But I will say, if I can say anything about being a co-parent, and that is, you know, you're angry and you're hurt, and no matter how it started, no matter who initiated it, but your kids are your kids, and they will never choose this. They would never say, yes, this is a great idea for you. Mm-hmm. And if you are talking, you know, I see so many people who gravitate to their kids to say, well, you know, I really need to be happy, and your dad does this, and your dad does that, or your mom does this, or your mom does this. And it doesn't matter how much you say that to their parent or to your kid. They will never say to you, oh, okay, Mom, I get it. Just leave him. It will never happen. They will never say, I'm on your side in this situation. They need to be a completely different entity from what you're going through. Yes, they're going to get dragged through stuff that is completely unavoidable, mm-hmm. but that will be enough. That will be absolutely enough, that they don't need to be dragged into. And whenever you say something about your partner, your ex-partner, in front of your kids, please, if I can say anything, remember, they are 50% them. So when you call dad an asshole, little Joey's in the backseat going, huh, and I'm just like my dad. Mm-hmm. If you call mom a bitch, Susie's in the backseat going, and I'm just like my mom. So when you throw these words around, that you are doing irreparable damage to your kids.
It's very difficult.
Yeah,
you never know in these breakups what's being said on the other side.
Nope.
And given that there's a disparity often in the way the courts administer custody time, you're never actually sure what's being said, what isn't being said.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned from a good friend of mine who was with the Israeli Secret Service, she taught me a whole bunch of things to deal with body language. And there's a tremendous amount that is communicated in these family split-ups with body language and other things other than verbal. Mm-hmm. And although one party can turn around and say, well, I've never said something, it's not exactly true, because there's these nonverbal communication pointers that are going on that are feeding opinions into these impressionable minds. Yeah. And as we both know, the human mind doesn't actually reach maturity until about 26 years old.
Yeah.
That's much later than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
Explains a few things about my own early adulthood, that
Mm-hmm.
I was immature. I was making decisions, good decisions for the majority of the time, but yeah, we were making mistakes. And I think, as we both understand, you get into your 30s and you feel like you're making better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel more established and more at ease with yourself, I think.
Yeah.
This business about the language, though, is a difficult one. I found some of the things I just discussed for clients have been very helpful. On a personal level, they haven't always been as successful on a personal level as they have in being able to advise people. One of the things that plays into this, and I'm sure you've seen this, I know other people have, is there's a lot of passive aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
And that's really, really difficult to deal with. When you only get children for a certain amount of time, which often men don't have equal time, it's very difficult to discipline. And I don't mean be authoritarian like they're in the army, but there are habits and things that get carried over. And teenagers, they want to do their own thing anyway. And there's nothing worse than, well, we don't have to do this at mum's house. I think that's just a very, very difficult situation to be in. A lot of guys are experiencing alienation because of that. And all you can do is be authentic. And being authentic when you don't get equal time and you don't get equal overnights is a very difficult one. I would say that it's still your best protection, because I think to some extent, I can speak for guys, we've all experienced elements of this. I know I have. It's not pleasant.
No.
It's grossly mean and unfair, but that's the best solution, because you can't legislate that from the courts.
No.
I know some people believe you can, but I don't think that's possible. It's being on a relationship level, and having behaving in a way where you're being true to yourself and you're demonstrating responsibility to them. Remember, you're not their best friends. I think I see a lot of people make mistakes where they try to be their best friends.
Yeah.
That may be happening at their mother's house. For guys, you have to be a parent, which means putting your foot down at times, and you will be unpopular. And it is hard, because the temptation, and I've been through this, to sort of bend the rule and say, well, I don't get them as much. Therefore, if I am too hard, they may not want to come again. I think you just have to be consistent, and that's what I've tried to do. And I tell everybody, be authentic, be yourself, be a father. We're not best friends. We're trying to be coaches, if you like, to bring on little adults that until 26, they may have had families of their own, but they're still children.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I approach. I mean, how do you respond to that from a woman's point of view, Cheryl?
Listen, I know, notoriously moms get more time, but I have to say, if you are a mom and for whatever reason you are keeping your kids from their dad, for whatever reason, just because you're mad, because they're not paying support, because of whatever it is, the only person you're hurting are your kids.
Right.
If you don't have a vested interest in dad anymore, that's fine. But you are damaging your kids. And I have to say too,
Yeah.
kids will watch the whole thing go down.
Yeah.
And they'll watch it and they'll watch it and they'll watch it. But then when they hit that 26 or 27, and it might take that long,
Yeah.
they will tell you, I saw that. I know that was wrong. But I was scared to say anything. I didn't walk the boat. I didn't want to, piss off mom or piss off dad.
Well,
But
to some extent, they think that they're the cause of it, aren't they?
Yeah,
And
100%.
They're not.
No, they have to stay out of the game. And again, I mean, there's extenuating circumstances when it comes to abuse and addiction. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, I'm pissed off. You cheated on me. I'm leaving you. I'm taking the kids. I'm taking the money. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
You can take the money, you can take the house all you want, but the kids are still his kids. And at some point in time, you chose to love your partner. And at some point in time, you chose to have children. Right. And when you made that decision and brought children into the world, they are now your priority, not your anger, not your finances, and so I think, every time you get ramped up, find a friend, find a therapist, find somebody to talk to about it, not your kids. And, again, you might think you're punishing dad or you might think you're punishing mom, but you're not. It's zero effect on them as much as you're punishing your children. Mm-hmm. And they didn't ask for any of this. So
how do we create a new story, Cheryl? How do we create a new story?
I think if everything we decide, everything we talk about, if we put our kids' faces in front of us first and say, okay, is this the best for my kid? Is this who I want to be? Do I want to be this person, or do I want to be this next level of a ex-wife or ex-husband? Do I want to be that level? Because where I am right now, this is what it's getting me. Is this serving me?
Right.
Is this serving my kids? No, I want to be that person. So find somebody who's gone to that point. Find somebody who can say, that might not be your best choice. Let's think about this again. Let's avoid this landmine over here because I've walked this path. I know that landmine. I know exactly where it is. Right. Let me help you skip over it. Let me help you step to the right. Let me help you step to the left. And sometimes it's just not like, don't leave it to yourself to do these things. And be cautious about, I'm obviously side with the coaching as opposed to therapy. Therapy is wonderful. But if you find a therapist who has not walked the path,
that's right,
then they don't have, that inner knowing of, I still say this, the day my ex and I split up, I still remember when we told the kids, and this was like 2005. I remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was in the house. I remember the words I said. I can still viscerally feel the punch in my stomach when I told the kids. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking to somebody who has been exactly where you are and can say, not alone, you're not by yourself, there is a way.
Yes.
And find somebody who can take your hand and walk with you through that and help you discover sometimes therapy just gives you answers and digs into deep trauma, which is wonderful, except coaching is very different. Coaching is, we know you have that next level in you. Mm-hmm. We just know how to.
And we don't want to, I think the difference between the therapy and the coaching is that the therapy can go on and on and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And it's very psychological, whereas the coaching can be, how can we get you quickly from, A to D or A to Z, mm-hmm. So that you've got a life that's been rebuilt. I see so many people that are in therapy for years and they're still a mess after 5 years. Whereas I'm a very practical minded person, and the people that come to me like to, they're achievers, maybe they're high achievers. And so they want to see tangible change, and they want to feel good about where they were and now where they've grown to.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can show a measurable improvement rather than something that's very esoteric, I think they actually naturally feel better. And so, you know, I'm always saying, let's do the analysis pretty quickly. Let's try, and once we get you stable, once we get you feeling good about yourself, once you've had some time, because you can't rush into this, let's build what it is. What is it you want to be? Who is it you want to be? And where in the case of the children, where do they fit into that puzzle? You know, what branch of the tree do we need to sort of populate there? What are the things we need to do so that you're feeling a sense of fulfillment? Because you're not going to be happy. I firmly believe that you're only happy when you're fulfilled. You're only fulfilled when you're growing.
Yeah.
You have to you have to be in that mode. Excuse me. I like the fact that you've led us into that sequence of things that we had talked about at our last podcast, and the mentoring side. You know, I mentioned jokingly, when we build the Yellow Brick Road, who are you going to have? You know, you're going to take, whether it's Obi-Wan Kenobi or what have you, or you're going to have the Tin Man, the Lion, you're going to need people along the way. I think what I've done is in each of the areas where you want to improve, you will find, if you like, a mentor or a coach or a sensei to help you become that piece of the person that you want to be. You know, if you think of yourself as a pie chart, there are slices of you that make up that pie chart. Who do I need? Who do I need that fulfills the physical side? Who is it that fulfills the relationship side? And then you go seeking and you go looking, and you've designed, if you want a new person, what should that person be like? Not a checklist. I see it more. I told Eddie this. I said, you weren't ever a checklist. I said, you were more like a multiple Venn diagram where you had overlapping circles. Where a piece of that person and a bit more like a recipe, a pinch of that and a pinch of this. But if I put 2 pinches of that and half a pinch of this, it would still be a great meal. It would still be a great flavor, but it would be different. And that's the way I approached that. I don't like the idea of a checklist. It works for some people. I would say, write down options of somebody that you want to find. And then what I always tell people, never settle. It will take you a long time. Don't go after the short-term gratification. Make it a mission, like you're looking for, El Dorado, lost treasure, because that's what you're looking for. The lost treasure.
I think too, like in looking and creating the Venn diagram or the list, however you want to look at it, I think the very first list or diagram you need to make is, who do I need to be first?
That's correct.
Who do I need to be before I even depend on anybody else, look for anybody else? You want to be you 2.0 to attract him 2.0.
Absolutely. Who do I need to be? Who do I need to be to find that person?
Because who I am now got me where I am now.
Who you are, because you'll hear, why is it I don't get this? Why is it I can't get this? Well, what have you done? What have you done in relation to yourself? And most people haven't spent 5 minutes working on themselves. And that's why they're not attracting that special person in their lives. Again, that's the sign of our times. That's the instant everything, instant gratification. And although you can find that and you get lucky at times, in terms of long-term satisfaction, long-term gratification, it's probably a little edgy. You know, the odds on that are probably long. Yeah, you agree?
I agree.
Should we look at it's that time, I think. Should we look at, I know we got some questions.
Perfect.
That we had kind of thrown at us. Some people wrote in on email, which was good.
I think we need a sequel though, Nigel. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Oh, yeah.
I know. We will be doing this again. I think this has just been
I hope
great.
that
It's so much fun.
People have enjoyed this. I mean, the idea is to empower people. And obviously we'd like to have people reach out to both of us. You get a 2-for-1 here, whereby you'll get different perspectives. And I think it's useful to have that that blend of approaches rather than just like a one shade of interpretation. I think that to a large extent is part of the problem. And getting uninformed opinions is kind of like a death nail, isn't it? And that's what most people sort of problem with. So let me throw this first question that we got at you.
Let's do it.
So I just divorced. How can I get started with my life again?
Well, I think the very first thing is to, instead of thinking big picture, instead of thinking, oh, I need to look way down here, figure out your life like you're driving in the dark and your headlights are on. Your headlights only show 2 or 3 feet in front of you.
That's good, yeah.
So if you can just take that one next step,
yeah.
It could be how do I get through the next hour? How do I get through the next 2 hours? How do I get through the night? And just keep reflecting back. Okay, that was a win. I got through my last hour. Now I just need to do the next hour. It's big picture that gets very overwhelming. So if you can make a list of things that you need to do, can you look at that list and go, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do, but I can do this one
bit, one bite. Yeah. I always talk about bits and bytes. I liked what you just said there, actually. That's a word that we hadn't used. I know we've talked about it before, but reflective, being reflective. So looking back and being honest with yourself and actually writing some things down, because we do forget when we're in this state of overwhelm, which you are, you tend to narrow down what it is you remember and what it is you interpret. And I think if you can give yourself that breathing time and be honest with yourself, I like to ask people just to, whether it's on a journal or on a pad, just write down, just do like a brain dump of everything that's on your mind.
Yes.
Because in doing that, a lot of you spew out literally all manner of things, and out of that, it's almost like a collage of stuff. There's a picture there, but you can't see it. When you stand back later and look at that collage, you say, oh yeah, I see a pattern here. I see a picture here. And I think that could be really, really useful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I even find in the coaching, it's sometimes, it's just giving people the space to just talk. And it's like journaling. When you hear what you're saying, sometimes people go, wow, that doesn't bother me. Okay, and it's gone. But when there's so much piled up, they can't sort through the crap to get to the nuggets that they need to grow.
One of the things that we had talked about before, and I don't think we touched on it today, is you need to get your inner vibration going. You need to do things that will, at that time, you're going to be in like a beta vibration. You're going to be pretty crappy. And you need to get to those higher faculties so that you can find you where you need to get into that gamma area. If you can, I think this is where, whether it's affirmation chants or something like that, or if you can get your hands on, do a meditation, or you can get your hands on these recordings. I know I have them on my website that you can access for free, that will actually you listen to for 15 minutes and it takes you into a higher plane. It does give you that ability to think more creatively and with clarity. I think that's a word we haven't used much tonight, clarity.
Right.
You're very clear about what it is you're feeling and what it is you want.
Yes.
So let's ask the second question here. We've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
We've got just enough time to do this, I think. What if I could, what if the co-parenting styles are different when you go from one home to the next?
Well, I hate to break the news.
Yeah.
But you can only control
Right.
what you control. And I'm talking about, he puts or she puts the kids in front of the TV all day, gives them junk food all day. They're allowed to have candy before they go to bed.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
But it's also when you or they have decided to separate, you have relinquished those responsibilities.
Right.
And all you're doing when you are disputing that and arguing that and bringing that to this, all you're doing is damaging the relationship, and your kids are not going to appreciate that either. And it really is unfortunate, but unless it's an abusive situation, you have no say. So not fun, not a great answer. Lots of times, there's no rules over there. There's no rules over here. They get to do. I understand. I've been through it. I've seen it. I know, but you cannot control that. So if you're going to take that on, you're taking on a layer of something you can't control, and it's going to cause you some very much inner turmoil that you will not be able to shed because you just can't control it. So you're going to have to go, what happens in my house, happens in my house, my rules, and that's just the way it is. So it's a hard truth, but it's a truth.
Right. I think we've all experienced this in some shape or form.
Oh God. Yeah.
An example that springs to mind is not use of cell phones in house. I like them switched off. Many times I've come in the room and everybody's on the cell phone and they're actually communicating to each other on text in the same room. And that drives me crazy. It's rude and it's a bad habit. I've no really good answers on that one. It's just something that you've just got to work at and try and deal with. The other side to it on a personal level is if you end up driving yourself into a frenzy and you damage your own blood pressure and you make yourself sick, you're doing nobody a favor. I think on some occasions you just have to not accept defeat, but accept the status quo and just do the best you can and accept that, at this moment in time, this is the way it is. Yeah.
And with your kids, it's the same thing. Like these, I understand it's different over there, but these are my values.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as you're just addressing your values and not just trying to be conflictive, but these are my values. This is how I feel. This is how I run my house. This is how it is. And you're going to get friction. You're going to get arguments.
Yeah.
That's part of being a parent.
What would you say? I mean, there are people that we probably both know that deliberately try to be difficult because they're trying to influence custody, for example. Have you any other words on that how you would handle that for the people that are listening?
I think custody was never a big conflict for me. However, I would say you just have to, in my opinion, is you stick by, like I said, your values, your morals. You have a compass. You don't deviate from your compass. And that's even the conversation you can have with your kids. You're not, you're not debating, you're not arguing, you're not putting down the other parent, but you're supporting yourself. This is what I believe in. This is my value. These are my morals. And this is the home that we live in together here. And, and I would leave it because, again, when they get older, like they're absorbing everything. Just because you think, oh, I'm going to stay at dad's forever because he always lets me watch TV, or I'm going to stay at mom's because she gives me good. They're still absorbing everything.
Right.
And, again, what you can't control, you can't control. You can control yourself. You can control how you react. You can control how you respond, and you can control what goes on in your floor walls. But when you relinquish that control, it actually gives you the freedom to say, okay, and I'm telling you, I promise you, your kids see everything.
And it's important that I suppose, we are talking about relationships. We are talking about their future here. Mm-hmm. But you've also got to consider your own self-health.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you can't function.
Yeah.
And I think, again, many people do neglect themselves and punish themselves. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
You've got to honor yourself. You have to, sometimes take the high road, as it's called. I don't know whether it's the high road, but you've certainly got to honor yourself, and you've got to honor and respect yourself for what it is you're trying to do. In a lot of these cases, it's not necessarily your fault. No. It's the other person that has decided for everybody.
Yeah.
That's a pretty selfish emotion that people have to come to terms with. There are very, very few of these circumstances that were amicable, like, oh, we'll separate. No, it's usually one person that decides for them, you, and the rest of the family. And as I always remind people, that person might be divorcing you, but the children are not being divorced. But they get caught up in it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure whether, as I see it, the majority of people realize that. I think it may be, if they love their children as much as they would have you to believe, then maybe they might not have been too quick to pull the gun, so to speak, quick to the draw. It seems to be that if everything's not hunky-dory all the time, then it's too easy to get out of the situation. Although I do believe that there are people that shouldn't be together.
Yeah.
I really do.
Of course.
So let's look at our last question, because
last question
is in.
Okay.
What if I'm in deep shit? What if I'm knee deep in this shit? I'm not sure. I'm not. Maybe financially they've been squeezed. They've been thrown out of the family home, or something like that. I don't know. The way I would try and address that is a little bit brief. Take 100% responsibility for your actions. That's what you can do differently. So you're asking yourself that self-analysis.
Yeah.
And see what you can do to still be the parent to your family, whilst at the same time not being selfish to yourself. I think, coming back to our initial point, Cheryl, self-care. If you're not happy in yourself, you're not going to be able to take this stuff on.
Yeah.
It comes back to that old saying on the airlines: put your mask on first before you try and rescue the next person. Yeah. And I think we have to get into the habit of saying no sometimes. And I think that's something, as a parent, We find it's like a knee jerk. We find that very difficult to do. Most parents do anyway. I know I do. I've had to say no a lot this last year because of circumstances. But I think that's what I would say. How about you?
Yeah. And I would also think, it's, if you're in it, it's never too late to stop. It's never too late to say, okay, what, like you said, 100% radical responsibility for my actions, my words. How has it served me? How has it served my kids? And can you stop? Can you communicate the desire to stop and start from there? You can always, just because it feels too late, this doesn't have to be your story forever.
Right.
And when you talk about self-care, I mean, honestly, when you have kids looking at you, what greater gift can you give your kid than to teach them self-care?
And a bit of grace. It's very, very difficult when you're upset and wound up and you feel beaten up and you feel wronged to maintain that. But that's, again, a discipline that you have to try and learn. Suck it up, as they say. Suck it up, keep calm, carry on. But again, have a plan. What's that old saying? And the sun comes up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nothing's forever.
That's right.
Nothing's forever. So I do believe that we can change things, but a lot of it comes down to what mindset we have.
Yeah.
I think we've got to get out of the mantra that we're a bad person. I would sum up on this, that you're not a bad person. Some people are, I suppose, but you're not a bad person. Fundamentally, you are a good person. You created children out of love. At the time that you created the children, there was feelings there that were good.
Yeah.
And you have these treasures that will always be part of you, even if they're not talking to you at the moment. And I think you need to feel good about that. But at the end of the day, you've got to chart your own course. And it may mean, sailing the ship out of the harbor a time or two, and you don't see them for a while. But you know where they are, and they know where you are, and you do the best to communicate and be authentic. And in time, all things will come good.
Yeah.
But it requires you to have a belief system. It requires you to have a plan. It requires you to make commitments to yourself first, I think.
And reach out. There's help out there. There are coaches.
Yeah.
Nigel and I both offer, we have a bonus at the end of this for a coaching call.
Yeah, we do.
For you to get a flavor of what this is like. And we may not be your people, but reach out to somebody.
Right.
Because you're right. Nigel, you need a plan, you need a structure, you need a format, because floundering and just grasping at whatever you get a hold of is just not going to help you grow and not help you shed the skin that you don't need to be in anymore and create you 2.0.
Yeah, if creating the 2.0, I think is a goal. If you see it as a target and shoot for that. I talked a lot in the last week or two about you need a moonshot. You got to see this as a moonshot.
Yeah.
And if you shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars, you'll hit the moon. If you go for a moonshot, then at least you might get into orbit, and the orbit would be, happiness in a relationship and a life. At the end of the day, you've got to build a life that people want to share. And I think if you create a life that people want to share, then a lot of wonderful things will materialize. And on that note,
Well, on that note, we will include with this all the links that you need if you want to reach out, and also a really introspective and reflective workbook that goes along with this masterclass. Nigel, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again. There's a lot more, I think, that we'll dig into.
Absolutely. And if there's feedback, questions, you will know how to get a hold of us.
Yeah, you will reach out with a lot of tools and things that we can give you, a lot of bonuses that we can give you, time for a consult, time for some of the other tools that we have to enable you to figure out things about yourself, how to plan the blueprint for you to move forward. So don't be shy. Take the leap of faith, as they say, and be bold, believe in yourself. And there is a future. There is sunlight over the horizon, as I always say. So go for
and
it.
if you're growing, in 6 months, you won't recognize your life.
No, you won't.
No, you won't. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nigel. This has been lovely.
Okay.
We'll see you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm going to stop the recording here.